Have you been watching the market and these historic low interest rates slowly starting to inch up? Maybe you think that now is the perfect time for you to start looking for and buying a house. But what are the costs that are involved with buying a house? Well, in this video, we're going to go over the costs that you're going to incur as a buyer when you're buying a house. Let's get to it. Welcome back to my channel. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend and happy Monday to you. My name is Chad Scott. I'm with eXp Realty, and let's talk about the costs that you'll incur while buying a house. So you're ready to buy a house. You have some savings saved away. You want to put that money towards the house. But how much should you ideally have saved? Well, ideally, depending on the loan type that you're going to go with, you want to talk to your lender about which loan type is best for you, either FHA, VA, another type of government loan, or maybe a conventional loan. You're going to want to have saved between 3% and 20% of the total purchase price of the house. That is ideally how much you want to have saved. Of course, not everybody can save that much money just due to life. So there are lots of programs out there in all areas, especially in our area, that offer help with your down payment assistance. Some are grants, some are loans, some will get you down to almost zero money for down payment for your new house. So when you're ready to buy a house, definitely come talk to me. I'll shoot you over to a fantastic lender that'll get you in touch with all those programs and make sure that you have the right amount of money for a down payment on your dream house. So when I'm working with first-time homebuyers, I get a lot of questions. Which lender do I pick? How do I choose a lender? How do I know which one to go with? This one over here has this rate. This one over here has this rate. Should I just pick the lowest rate and go with them? Sometimes, yes, you definitely should pick the lowest rate and go with them, but not all the time. So when you first start looking for a house, you're often bombarded with a lot of ads from the big guys like Rocket Mortgage, Quicken Loans. They often have really fantastic rates on the outside. When you dig in a little bit deeper, they charge you extra points and other fees for closing costs. Makes that fantastic rate that you're getting for the life of the loan all of a sudden not seem so great with all the extra fees that you're being charged during the loan and before the loan even starts. I work with several reputable local lenders here in the Kenosha and Gurnee, Illinois area. They all have different rates. They all have different philosophies. They're all fantastic people, and I try to match up the perfect lender for the perfect buyer so that we all mesh well together and we all get the job done. So when you're ready to look, definitely shop around lenders, try and find yourself the best rate. But just remember, going with a big national guy just because they have a shiny, fancy, low-looking rate is not always the best idea. A lot of times those big national guys, they drop the ball and you end up not closing on time, or other things happen and your closing gets pushed back, and that's just a big headache for everybody. So when you're looking for a lender, definitely come to your trusted realtor, ask them for their advice, ask them for 2 or 3 different lenders, talk to the 2 or 3 different lenders, and go from there. So you've been looking at houses now, you have your lender picked out, you have your estimated rate, you're ready to go. Now let's find a realtor. You're going to want a patient realtor to work with first-time homebuyers, because first-time homebuyers have a lot of questions. First-time homebuyers are my specialty. I love answering questions, I love hand-holding, I love making sure that you guys have all your questions answered in a timely manner. If you don't go with me, for whatever reason, please make sure that you interview a couple different realtors and make sure you pick the one that you feel is the best fit for you. You're going to want to pick a realtor that is no pressure. They're not going to pressure you to buy the first couple houses that you see right away. Some realtors you'll find are very impatient, and they kind of put a lot of pressure on you to just buy a house quickly so they can move on. You're going to want a realtor that works with a lot of first-time homebuyers because they're usually a lot more patient. My clients are primarily all first-time homebuyers or secondary homebuyers moving up from Illinois, buyers like that. And a lot of people also ask me, what do your services cost me? Well, as a buyer, my services cost you nothing up front. You do not pay me anything right away. My payment actually comes from the seller. So the seller pays the realtor fees at closing out of the proceeds from the house. So as a buyer, usually the realtor costs you absolutely nothing. You get all my expertise, all my hand-holding for pretty much free. So these first couple steps have cost you absolutely nothing. It's just looking at houses online and talking to people, talking to the lender, talking to the realtor, seeing which person is a better fit for you to work with. Now, once your offer is accepted, and you settle on a house, and you put your offer in and accepted, now what happens? Well, the first thing you're gonna have to do is you have a certain amount of time to turn in what's called earnest money. Earnest money is something that you give to the seller, usually the seller's brokerage, and it shows that you're serious about buying this house. Usually in our area, earnest money is about $1,000 depending on the house, As you get into higher value homes, like $500,000 and up, it can sometimes become a percentage of the price, like 2 or 3% of the sales price. They're going to want for earnest money. Well, what it does is it tells the seller, I'm serious about buying this house. Here's some money. If I happen to walk away from this deal without reason, you can keep this money, this $1,000 that I'm putting down. Now, of course, in the offer of purchase contract that you signed and sent over to the seller that the seller accepted, there are 3 to 4 reasons that you can back out of the contract and still get that earnest money back. So don't feel like you're giving this earnest money up, and if you decide to change your mind during the inspection time, you can't ever get this money back. You most definitely will get that money back. If something comes up during the inspection, and the seller refuses to fix it, and you don't want to move past it, you can definitely get that money back. So don't feel like that. This money also gets applied towards your loan at the closing table. So as long as you go all the way through the deal, and you're sitting there at the closing table, you talk to your lender about where you want that $1,000 earnest money to go towards. Most people just apply it towards the principal of the loan. Some people though, because they need a little help with the down payment assistance, they'll take that $1,000 that they took out of their checking account 30 days prior, and they'll say, put that towards the closing costs. So that money can be applied to any number of different things at the end of the loan process. So earnest money is a big important step in the home buying process. And like I said, don't feel like it's something that you can lose. That offer of purchase contract that you signed and the seller signed and the seller accepted, there's also a contingency in there most times. This past summer, this contingency was being waived a couple times by buyers just because the market was so incredibly competitive. That if you waive this inspection contingency, it makes your offer a little more appealing to the seller because the seller will not have to fix anything in the house. The house is basically being sold as is. But as a buyer's realtor, I always recommend my buyers do an inspection. It's just part of your due diligence, making sure that the house is safe, making sure it's not ready to fall over, making sure you're not going to buy a new furnace in a week after you buy the house. So this is something that'll come out of your pocket. It is a buyer expense. Pay the home inspector yourself. Usually once the home inspection is done, in our area, the inspection kind of depends on the size of the house. Condos, you're looking at probably $150 to $200 for a condo inspection, and it kind of goes up from there. Most houses you're gonna be looking at about a $350 to $400 inspection price for most houses in our area. If you have a huge house that's, say 6,000-7,000 square feet, they may charge you a little more, $700 to $1,000 for home inspection. Most houses in our area are not that big though, so you can budget for around $350 to say $450 cost for a home inspection. The inspector will go through the house, they'll check all the outlets, they'll check all the doors, they'll check the furnace, the water heater, the AC, make sure everything's in proper working order. At the end of the inspection, if you were there for the inspection, they'll go over things with you, point out anything that they feel is important, and then they'll also write a report. The report will get emailed to you and to me as your realtor, and that's where you start negotiations with the seller for any repairs that you may or may not want. Another out-of-pocket cost that you're gonna have to incur as a buyer is the appraisal fee. Whether you're buying with a government loan, FHA, VA, USDA loan, or a conventional loan, you're gonna have to pay an appraisal fee. An appraiser is somebody hired by the bank to go out and look at the house. They don't really do an inspection, they just kind of walk through kind of quickly. VA, FHA, they kind of do a little more of a thorough check. They just kind of check for safety issues like railings. They want to make sure there's no peeling paint in the house, make sure that it doesn't look like the roof is going to cave in anytime soon, stuff like that, safety issues. A conventional loan, they just kind of go in, walk through the house really quick, make sure it looks okay. And then they pull comps in the area, so what other houses in the area have sold for, and they assign a value to the house that you're buying. They want to make sure that you're not overpaying for that house. So if your house, let's say you offered $100,000 for a house, and the appraiser comes back and says that house is only worth $90,000, well, the bank is going to say, well, we can only give you a loan for $90,000 now. This does not happen too terribly often, but it does happen from time to time. That's when you go back to the seller and negotiate a new sales price with the seller. But that appraisal fee is something that you have to pay for as a buyer out of pocket. You'll pay that directly to the lender. It's typically around $500, although each lender is a little bit different, so they might have different costs depending on the lender that you decide to use. So that's one good question that you can ask the lender when you're interviewing lenders is what their appraisal fees are. But you can typically budget around $500 for an appraisal fee. If you are doing a FHA or VA loan, there may be a second or sometimes even third appraisal fee that you may have to pay. So if during the first appraisal they go in there and they say chipped and peeling paint, FHA and VA consider that a safety hazard. The seller has to scrape and repaint that because they're afraid that you may eat the paint chips, which may be contaminated with lead. which would then kill you. So that has to be fixed before closing. So if they find that, the appraiser's gonna say, well, this has to be fixed, then I'll come back out and look at the house again. So if they come back out and look at the house a second time, there may be a second appraisal fee. That's why usually the home inspection is done before the appraisal, so your home inspector can catch things like that, like a missing handrail going downstairs or chipped or peeling paint. So then you can ask the seller to fix that before the appraisal, so you're not paying for a second appraisal. The last expense that you have to pay as a buyer is your closing costs. This is usually brought with you to closing in the form of a certified check. It has to be a certified check from a bank or money order. It cannot be a personal check. Your lender will usually tell you usually a day before, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on how good your lender is, how far ahead of the game they are, what that money is, how much money you have to bring with you to closing. This money that you bring with you to closing usually covers your prepaids if you're going to escrow your insurance and your taxes. It'll cover a couple months worth of insurance and taxes to put into your escrow account. And it'll also cover the closing costs that you're paying to the lender, basically for creating this loan for you, for lending you money. You're paying them to lend you money on the front end. So that's typically the last charge that you'll incur as a buyer during the home buying process. So those are all the costs you're going to incur as a buyer when you're purchasing the house during the loan process. If you found this video informative, which I hope you did, please hit the subscribe button down below. Check out this other video I have down here about the buying process. As always, thank you so much for checking out this video. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next week on Monday.